Hey everybody! I first want to say thank you for all the love and support that you all have shown. I am just overjoyed by the support and the excitement to talk about our mental health and talk about ways in which we could elevate our minds, right, on a daily. And so, with that being said, I'm gonna just get into it. I feel passionate about this topic because my own personal experience with my mental health journey, and also my experience of working with young people. And I just seen how crucial it was for our communities to really learn tools and educate ourselves on mental health. It is so crucial. The children touch my heart because our children are impacted by so many things in social media, on television, at school, that a lot of adults who don't work with children on a daily aren't even aware of. And some of the things that we are aware of, we are not aware of the magnitude of these certain situations or externals, or the external environment, right? So my heart went out to these young people because I felt like I've been in a similar situation in regards to like having these emotions and not truly understanding how to process my emotions, and really going through phases in my life. So I'm happy, then I'm sad. I went through so many phases, and so when I begin to work with young people, I begin to see similar patterns on a different scale though, because like I said, they deal with some things that we as adults, and I'm young, as a young adult, I didn't experience. So each year, each generation, they deal with their own set of problems, and they deal with it in their own unique way. And so I seen the need to have conversations with these young people that I worked with young people that I worked with, have conversations about how to maintain, and how to discover, because this is a journey, how to discover yourself. And I enjoyed working with them. They taught me, one, that they do face troubles because I know a lot of us like, they're young, all they do is but they do face troubles. And two, they taught me to analyze myself. And three, they led me to therapy. And it may sound funny, but it's real, because I began to see that it was almost like and this is funny, but it was almost like countertransference when I was working with them. I began to help them, but then they were bringing out things in me that I was like, man, I'm still angry about that situation. So I began to see that it was some things in me that I hadn't worked through. So that brought me to today. Brought me to my now. It encouraged me to study. It encouraged me to go to therapy. It encouraged me to build a community of support that could help me through the traumas that I hadn't truly dealt with. And so, yeah, working with them really helped push me to where I am now. And this is why I'm so adamant. So shout out to all my young people. Shout out to all my high schoolers, my middle schoolers, my elementary school children. Like, they are remarkable, and if you're with them, if you're able to work with them, they definitely will bring out something in you that you probably didn't even realize was there. So shout out to them. They're the reason why I began my mental health journey. I studied psychology in undergrad, and honestly, I minored in English, and my English courses were therapeutic as well. But studying psychology, I I did a lot of research in undergrad. I just wanted to know why. I never would accept this is how the world is, this is how this is. I wanted to know why, and my why was like, I'm reading, I'm asking questions, I'm doing all that I need to do to understand what's really going on. And so a lot of my research was geared towards minority youth and the different challenges that they face, and creating tools to help them navigate through life. And so with studying minority youth, I also had to study the past. So I studied minorities in general. I studied about the different patterns that we see minorities going through. I studied minority mental health service providers and the different tools that they use. And then I also studied the gap in between mental health service providers and minorities in general. And I could sit here and speak about statistics all day, but just know that the statistics were saddening. However, there's hope, because there's always an opportunity to educate, and there's always an opportunity for us to learn and for us to grow. So yeah, I did a lot of research, but I wasn't complacent with just doing research. I said, okay, so what do I need to do to get out there and to work and to change these numbers and to be an advocate for minority youth and to be an advocate for minorities in general. And so that basically summed up my undergrad years. I was still on my mental health journey as well in undergrad. Throughout all of undergrad, my journey continues, so I will never say that I'm done with my mental health journey. But yeah, my journey continued, and I moved back to California. I was living in Texas and moved back to California. And when I came to California, I applied for a master's in social work program at Cal State San Bernardino, and I got accepted. And I'm working at a school currently. I intern at a school and for a school district, and I see the same patterns. Different state, different environment, different community, similar or the same issues that our young people are going through. And so I was like, look, we gotta do something to educate ourselves as a community. We have to learn to stick together and to really do what it is that we need to do to help, right? So here I am now, and we're on YouTube and we're gonna do this together. I just first want to start off by saying there is a difference between mental health and mental illness. I will talk about mental illness on here. I will talk about some disorders that are in the DSM-5, but the number one thing that I want you to understand is mental health is about your emotional, your psychological, and your social well-being. Whereas mental illness is a mental health disorder that distorts your mood, your thinking, and your behavior. So if you see me look off to the side, I do have my notes because I get super excited and sometimes I get off topic, and I don't want to do that. Okay. So those are the two, that's the difference between the two. And so sometimes when we say mental health or mental wellness, people automatically think, oh, she's gonna talk about anxiety, oh, she's gonna talk about depression, and she's gonna talk about coping skills. No, actually, mental wellness is a broad topic, and we could talk about multiple things. We could talk about discrimination and how that affects your mental health. We could talk about vicarious trauma and how that affects your mental health. So it's a broad topic. So I won't just talk about mental illness, but I'm talking on mental health. And so some of the reoccurring like patterns that I see in society today that really takes a toll on mental health, and I've also done some research, so I have numbers to back it up, is our environment. Our environment is very conducive to who we are, how we feel, what we do, right? And you can also think of your environment as your home, your upbringing. Whether you go to church, that's a part of your environment. School, that's a part of your environment. So these external, and when I say external stimuli, I mean things that aren't necessarily internal, they're not inside, but these external stimuli, like these different systems that we are a part of, and how they affect our mental health. So that is something that we must be mindful of and aware of. And so I often listen to many mental health service providers who have like podcasts or YouTube channels, and a lot of times they talk about the different structures or social structures that we are a part of. So some of us identify with being a Democrat, some of us identify with being a Christian, a Muslim, some of us identify with being African American, being female. We have these different social structures that we connect to. And so the most important thing is to understand how that social structure, and I'm not always saying that it's a bad thing, but how it plays in on our mental wellness and the different ways it can affect our mental wellness as also. So number one thing that studies will show, psychologists will say, is it is important through your journey in life to understand who you are, and how you identify yourself is most times is how people define who they are, right? So you'll ask the question like, who are you? I'm a Black female who loves to dance, and I'm a Christian. Like, we begin to label all these things, which isn't bad, because that could be a way in which we identify ourselves, right? But it is so important to really sit and reflect on, who am I? Not just in connections to what system I'm connected to, or in essence in which system I'm connected to, but also in essence of what made me, and how am I going about being, okay? So a lot of times we identify ourselves with the things that we do, also, which sort of creates this dissonance sometimes. And what we have to challenge ourselves to do is to really identify with who we are being. And that's so important. And once you begin to take that journey, and that's a never-ending journey, so you're constantly, because there's a time and there's a season for everything, right? And so if 19-year-old Kayla was to walk in 24-year-old Kayla's shoes right now, 19-year-old Kayla wouldn't have made it in 24-year-old Kayla's shoes, because she had to evolve. So there's my environment caused me to evolve, right? And that's why I say it's so important. Like, this is like one of the number one things. It's so important to know your environment and to know whether it's conducive for your mental health. Like, that is very, very important. And it's also very important that you begin to define yourself by who you are, not what you do, okay? Those two aspects are critical for your mental wellness. They are critical. So, like I was saying, yeah, 19-year-old Kayla wouldn't have made it in 24-year-old Kayla's shoes, because her environment caused her to have to be different in this state, okay? So I see this a lot. I see where clients try to bring their 4 or 5-year-old self into their 15, 16-year-old life, and I'm speaking on children, but same idea for adults. You have to begin to evolve, and once you evolve, I often reflect on why I evolved, right? So I'm no longer 19-year-old Kayla. 19-year-old Kayla was in undergrad. She had less responsibilities. 24-year-old Kayla, let's talk about 19-year-old Kayla had less responsibilities. She wasn't working as much. Her environment didn't demand as much from her. Now 24-year-old Kayla, it has way more responsibilities. Her environment demands a lot more from her. So 24-year-old Kayla had to shape into what her environment demanded, okay? It's very important that we understand that, because that does play a part in our mental wellness. A lot of times we don't give ourselves time, we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to process our new state of being. We don't allow ourselves to process the new environment in which we're in, and so we do things rapidly. Things are happening quickly, and they're happening quickly, but we haven't yet afforded ourselves to process this new state that we're in. So I could use an example. For example, you buy a home. Great, you buy a home, but before you bought that home, there was a process to buying that home, right? So you had to do certain things in order to get that home, and you couldn't continue on doing the things that you were doing before you had the home. So you couldn't continue on, I know a lot of people, they're like, yeah, I gotta watch my credit. I can't do all that because I'm trying to get a home. So you couldn't continue to do the things that you were doing before you begin to have the thought of, I want to buy a home, and then you begin to make actions towards buying the home, right? You couldn't continue on in that state. It's the same thing with our mental health, and we can't continue on in the same state. I know people be like, each level you have to evolve and you have to change. That is so true. So each state in your life you have to evolve and change, but sometimes we don't know what state we're in. And so that is key, to really sit down and I advise you, go get a therapist. Yes, I'm advising you to go get a therapist, because a therapist could be multiple things. A therapist, for one, is going to help you process through what state you are in. A therapist is also going to meet you where you're at and help you where you're at. So I am definitely encouraging you all to go get a therapist. But when you do not process through that the new state that you're in, your mindset begins to continues to be old. It's not conducive to the new environment you're in. Your mindset is conducive to the old environment that you were in. And so oftentimes, like I said, this causes a dissonance, because I'm here, I believe I'm here, I believe that I could buy a house, but my actions are not proving that. And it's not that you don't want your actions to prove that, it's just your actions aren't proving that because you haven't truly processed what it is that you need to do, how it is that you need to change, and then made a plan for that change. And so that's all it is. That was just an example, but yeah, it's very important that we allow ourselves to process our now state, and we handle our now. Where are we at right now? What are we doing right now? And it's so important that we allow ourselves time to process that, and that does not come easily. I'm here to tell you, and when I speak, I'm speaking generally, and I'm speaking from, this is what statistics says, but you know yourself. And for most, that does not come easily for us to be able to really process our now and accept our now. And sometimes, most of the times, I forget to process my now. And that's why I say it's very important to have that therapist, because that therapist is going to give you some awesome tools on how to process your now and to be aware of your environment, to be aware of your emotions, and to be aware of your actions. That is so important. So with that being said, your emotions, man, woo, your emotions play a huge part in your mental wellness. We are species that thrive off of motivation, what motivates us, right? And our emotions define those motivations. So, for example, if someone comes to me and they tell me something like, I don't like you, and I really like that person, me and that person are cool, and they like, I don't like you, Kayla, my emotions automatically are like, my feelings and emotions, I'm gonna use those words interchangeably, but my automatic feeling is like, dang, but I thought we were really cool. And then I begin to get sad. That is my emotion. My emotion is sad, right? Well, what motivated my emotion was the fact that this person came to me and said something to me, and that caused me to feel a certain way. That was the motivation for the reason why I was feeling sad. So our emotions, we have to check our emotions because there are times when our emotions can get out of whack. When we're not constantly checking ourselves, they could get out of whack, I would say, and we will become solely, and it's not a bad thing to be emotional. Like, that is not a bad thing to be emotional, but you have to check your emotions to ensure that they are accurate, okay? Because our emotions turn into thoughts, and then those thoughts turn into behaviors. And if we are not careful, we will easily allow these emotions to control our entire life. But if we're not careful, they could be false emotions, which create false thoughts, which create negative behaviors. And that is what we want to avoid. We want to avoid having these negative emotions that create negative thoughts, that create negative behaviors. So that's why I say we gotta check these emotions. We have to check them. It's so hard. It's not, I'm not gonna say it's so hard. It's difficult because we are naturally fueled and motivated by our emotions, right? Naturally fueled. Your emotion is, I'm sad. Most times, when most people are sad, their behavior shows that. And their behaviors could be crying. Their behavior could be sitting in a room all day. You know, like your behavior, for most people, if you're sad, your emotion is sad. Your behavior usually matches that emotion. And then the thoughts that come along with that emotion. Something happens, it makes you sad, your emotion is sad. You begin to think, man, this is horrible. Man, this is, you know, unspeakable. You know, you begin to have these thoughts, and then your behaviors play on your thoughts. This is unbelievable. I can't believe this happened to me. I'm so sad right now, I'm so hurt, right? And then you begin to act out hurt, you begin to act out sadness. So it's so important that we check these emotions. I will give you an example of how I had to do this recently in my own life. I was talking to someone and this person came to me and said, you know, I really don't like the way you do A, B, C, D. I said, okay. And sometimes I don't allow myself to process things, which is that word processing, like, is very important. Sometimes I don't allow myself to process things. And so I didn't allow myself to process it. And I took that person's critique on what they don't like that I do. And I said, oh, so this person is saying that they don't like the way I did this, but I did this way before. So are they saying that they don't like the way I do things at all? And I began to harper on these thoughts, but because I didn't check my emotion, because my emotion was automatically, I would say my emotion was anger automatically, because it's like, how, like, so you saying you don't like anything that I did at all, right? And so because I didn't check that emotion, like, Kayla, is it right to have this emotion because she's expressing how she feels about a certain situation? You know, she was speaking about what I did right then and there, and how I did it right then and there, and how she didn't like it that I did that in that moment. Okay, she wasn't saying that she didn't like how I did things in general. Even if I've done this before, it was just that moment for her she did not like. So if I would have allowed myself to process through that, I would not have had those automatic negative thoughts, and my behavior would not have changed towards this individual. Because, baby, after she told me that, my behavior changed towards her. And most of the times, unconsciously, my behavior changed towards her, right? I was just like, no, I ain't got nothing against her, but I talked to her less when I seen her, you know? So my behaviors begin to change because I automatically had these negative thoughts. My mind went to the wrong place, and that became my reality for her, right? I created this whole, and that's what will happen if you continue to have these, if you don't check your emotions. What would begin to happen is you create this whole little bubble that's not, and inside this bubble is your fantasy of what's going on, but you never pop the bubble to see the reality of what's really happening, right? So those are important tools. Like, and what I would do for myself, and I deal with my clients, that also I write, especially in tough situations, I write down all my automatic negative thoughts, like, especially when I'm in a tough time. So if I can't write about it, I'll begin to say, Kayla, what are your negative thoughts right now? And I'll begin to list all my negative thoughts, and then for every negative, I'm making a positive, because I have to check it. This is the way I'm checking it, to ensure that this situation doesn't become my reality, right? Especially when I haven't truly processed this. And so just doing that, and therapists call that thought processing, because when you're able to write out these negative thoughts, and then you begin to challenge the validity of them if you're able to create a positive for it. So thought process through it. That's so important for your mental wellness. It is. It's a saying where therapists are supposed to meet clients where they're at, right? And so it's important for you to be able to define what mental health is, okay? And that is your emotional, your social, and your psychological well-being. So if you feel like your emotions are out of whack, you feel like your your social life is out of whack, you feel like your psyche is out of whack, it's defined by you. So yes, the world has labels. Yes, the world has, science has labels. We have the DSM-5, which gives you the labels of the different mental illnesses that, are prevalent in the world, which they update quite frequently, right? Yes, they have labels. And I was telling an individual this the other day, like, she was doing her own studies on some of the mental disorders that are in the DSM-5, and she said, oh my goodness, Kayla, like, I felt like I had half those mental illnesses, right? Because they give you the symptoms of each. And I said, this is the crazy thing about it. I had a mentor that would say, we're all one tragic event or one trauma-induced event from being mentally ill, which is true. Like, we all have these symptoms, right? We all have these feelings and these emotions. We all have these behaviors. However, mental illness, the DSM-5 will say, if it affects your social life to an extreme level, if it affects your work to an extreme, your work life to an extreme level, if it affects your relationships with others to an extreme level, then we'll go ahead and put this label on you, okay? But as far as you defining your mental health, that is so important. What does healthy look like to you? That is so important. And I know a lot of people won't say that because they be like, well, whatever healthy looks like to them. And no, that is very important. I really want you to think about what healthy looks like to you. And if you feel at some point, you feel like this is what healthy looks like, but I'm not living that, then that's your moment to really go to therapy. I promise, like, I am going to push therapy. I am, because therapy is a resource that we can use to better ourselves. That's it. That's all. And I will push it till forever. Go to therapy. Yes, because then you could gain tools. Like, most of us want to be a better us, but we just don't have the tools sometimes on how to be a better us. And then it will give you tools for those moments in your life where you're like the worst you, where you feel like the worst you are being right now. Like, I'm just the worst Kayla I could be right now. No, the therapy gave me tools. It will give you tools on how to be the best you could be. So yeah, definitely go to therapy. Look into it. Like, we could definitely talk about, if you're like, hey, and we are going to talk about it, finding the right therapist for you. That's so important. But go to therapy. That's like one of the most essential tools for our mental wellness. Therapy, on top of other things that we will definitely discuss as well. And so I'm gonna wrap it up, but I was looking at my notes to stay on focus, y'all. Why mental health matters today. It matters today, it mattered yesterday, and it'll matter forevermore. Let me tell you why. And yes, I did use part of the Bible. Mental health is it's almost like the engine for running your psychological well-being. It's the engine for running your emotional well-being. It's the engine for running your social well-being. It is the engine. And when the engine blows out, the car will never be the same, right? So our mental health matters because it helps you be the best you could possibly be. And that is so important. And I know especially for those who have a passion to help others, and to those who have a passion to serve others, we have to ensure that we are mentally healthy, because we cannot be effective if we aren't effective for ourselves. So go get a therapist. I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, yes, we have to do what it is that we need to do to ensure that our emotions are conducive to our behaviors, and they're conducive to our thoughts. So we have to, especially when we're constantly serving others, we have to ensure that we are conducive and helpful for ourselves. So your mental health matters. I want us to continue to heal. I want us to continue to learn, and I want us to continue to grow. I want to say thank you for watching the first video. I'm so excited for what is to come. I am going to invite guests. We are going to talk about a topic every video, and I'm just excited, y'all. This is going to be great. Remember, use the tools that were mentioned, like thought processing, therapy, and checking yourself, checking your emotions. Use these tools. They are so beneficial, and they will help you be the best you could be. Thank you. See y'all soon.